So I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Municipal Finance Advisory Commission this morning, Wednesday, November 20th, beginning at 10:01 a.m. So welcome, everyone. Before we move on with the agenda, I did want to take the opportunity to introduce the newest commissioner to the Municipal Finance Advisory Commission. It's my pleasure to welcome Marcia Marion, who is the Finance Director in the town of Brookfield. I don't know Marcia personally, but I know she has a wealth of experience in the municipal space here in the state of Connecticut. So Marcia, welcome. And with that, if you'd like to take the opportunity to introduce yourself to the commission, that would be great.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Marion. I don't know how to change my username on the screen, but I have been in Brookfield for 6 years now as the finance director, and prior to that, I was a partner in a CPA firm doing municipal audits for 35 years.
Okay. All right, again, welcome, Marcia. And for the commissioners, Marcia is going to be taking the spot representing municipalities with a population of at least 10,000 residents, but under 25,000. And she is taking the place of Kate Clark at this time. So we are fully staffed from the commission standpoint. And, we look forward to the meetings ahead with bringing Marcia's expertise and knowledge to the commission and in our review of the municipalities that are before our commission. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes to the August 14th, 2024 meeting.
So moved, Kim Kennison.
Second. Spielman.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Mike, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
I'm also going to abstain.
Okay, next up is an update on the 2023 and 2024 municipal audit reports. Bill, would you like to walk us through that?
Yeah. So for the 2023, the submissions there are some small improvements over the 2022, but in comparison to 21. We're still behind, but in general, it hasn't been up to par what we would expect. We have good news. We did receive the town of Enfield's 23 audit report yesterday, so that knocks one more off the list. So we're down to 6 outstanding 2023 reports. Again, we don't believe this is something that we would, we definitely want to see improvements. And it's not just in terms of the number of reports, but the length of time before that final report comes in. It's been trending anywhere from last couple of years, 18 to 19 months past the December 31st due date, which is it creates a lot of difficulties for everyone.
So just in regards to an overview of the 6, we've got Danbury with a projected submission of this December, East Lyme with a projected submission of February of 2025, Middletown with a projected submission of December, Marlborough, there is not identified a projected submission date, but I believe we'll be speaking with the town manager and interim finance director on the call this morning. With Stamford, they're projecting December of 2024, and Wethersfield There is not a projected date identified at this time. All right, next up is the City of Derby. And who do we have with us today from the City of Derby?
Oh, Mike, I think it's Dan
morning.
Berry.
Sorry, yep, let me
Mayor
back up.
Martino and Brian Hall.
Okay,
Finance Director.
okay, hang on, please. We do have the opportunity to receive updates from 3 of the municipalities that are delinquent on their 2023 audit submissions. So if we can start with Danbury.
Good morning, everybody.
Your Al's and Finance Director Dan Garrett on the call.
We do. I have myself, my Chief of Staff, Dan Garrick, and I know Scott from RSM, who is always on, is on as well, so he can give you an update from our external audit perspective. Overall, for me here on the executive side, we continue to be regimented here and disciplined, and our focus as I came in a year ago, just under a year ago, and met everybody here for the 22 audit was to be realistic with you. I still believe that we can be done by the end of December on our end. Again, I'm not going to speak on the technicalities of things. That's where we have Dan and Scott from RSM here to fill you in. But as promised then and continues to now, we are fully staffed. We have put an incredible amount of resources into consultants and firms internally. We've been working with CLA practically this whole time. We have retained them for the 23 audit as promised during the 22. In fact, allocating money that keeps them here going forward a little bit longer, just because once we're done with 23, we know we want to turn around 24 in a much quicker pace, and we believe we will be on track to do so. But we know that keeping CLA on just furthers our commitment to what we've promised everybody here. With that, I'll step back, let Dan and Scott really get into the weeds or any of the questions that your team may have. So nice seeing everybody, and if I don't get an opportunity to speak again, I hope everybody does enjoy their holiday this month.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. So the information that I sent to you earlier this month has, I went to update it this morning at 2 o'clock, looked at it again at 9 o'clock this morning, and there's further updates. So we're constantly moving forward with it. On the fieldwork side, the city has 24 open items. 6 of those are reserved for additional requests or follow-up. So we really have 18 outstanding. Out of those 18 items, 11 were received within the last week. On the single audit side, we have 4 items, and on the school side, we have 17 items outstanding, but 14 of those are reserved for additional follow-up or selections. To be fair to RSM, there were several items that were recently received. The bank statements for extracurricular additional accounts were just received on those this week.
The last one came in like 2 days ago,
Yeah.
right?
Trial balances from the schools came in within the last week or so.
Yeah.
And the OPEB disclosure report was received yesterday. So we expect a lot of those additional requests to be coming forth from that. But we do expect to be done, report to be published by the end of December.
Okay. Scott, are you on the call?
Yes, Scott Bassett here. As Dan said, you heard of the items that were just delivered, Board of Ed, how much that takes up of the city audit is quite a lot. We did, I guess Dan said you did receive the OPEB item that we requested, the full actuarial report, correct?
Right. That was just
so-
received yesterday.
Yesterday.
So we have a process, as you know, here we are the last week of November. That's a lot of work to be done once we bring these things in and get through our quality control process, just like these folks do. I will say the city of Danbury has pushed hard in trying to get all this information together. December 31st, that's a tight timeline as we keep pushing and pushing out and getting information. We're committed to doing our best, but as you know, we have a process ourselves, so we won't rush out a report until we're done with that process. But we do see the light at the end of the tunnel on this one, which is from a lot of work from the city side and bring a lot of things together. So if it's not December 31st, it won't be long after that. I can commit to that.
Okay, thank you. Certainly, it sounds like you guys are moving in the right direction, and certainly, if not December, hopefully, in the early part of January, things will get locked up, and then you can shift the focus to the 2024 audit. So, just in regards to that, how are the books from a closeout standpoint looking for June 30th, 2024?
They're in pretty good shape. I know there's quite a bit to do over at the school side. Joanne, our assistant director here, has been going over there almost on a daily basis, helping them out with that because they are short-staffed now. They've staffed up somewhat, but they still need a little help. So we're keeping that moving forward to make sure that nothing has creeped into the 24 from 23 and prepare for the 24 audit.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
This is Marcia. I don't.
I do.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
Michael? Okay, thank you. Mayor, I have a question. One of the things that's really important as we go forward is for you to timeline out the FY24 and to timeline out the FY25 so that we know that you get back on track again. And so it might be an aggressive move to consider this, but it would be helpful for us to understand what your plans are for, it's really 3 years. And so if you close out the 23 by December 24th, December of 2024, okay, or January, then if you wanted to get within the 6-month allowable state extension, you would have 6 months to turn around to meet a June 2025 deadline. I would suggest that you definitely try to do that. It would be definitely in your favor for a number of reasons, including I think that Moody's had withdrew your rating, and as well as you won't be issuing your reports beyond the state allowable timeline, which of extensions. So I'd like you to really think about that, and maybe the next time we meet, come back and tell us what that timeline will be. And then FY25, if you could really strive for another 6 months turnaround, then that would put you back in processing as the requirements are within 6 months from the year-end close. So it's something for you to think about, and I think that that would fare well for your town.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kennison. Absolutely top of mind. We have an aggressive mindset here on what we're doing with the team. And again, they were short-staffed. They are fully staffed now. And I do have to give credit to Dan and especially and specifically to Joanne there, who has been working her tail off getting this. And she has an even more aggressive timeline and goal for the 24 than we do. And it's nice to have her at the helm there. And Joanne, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit, or Commissioner, if you want us to wait till the next one for her to do so, but I do know that is top of mind as they work on 23 as well.
Fantastic news.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for the representatives of Danbury, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
The next municipality is East Lyme. I don't believe their first selectman or finance director are available for the call today. But there was an acceptance from their auditor, Jessica Aniskoff. Jessica, are you on the call?
I am.
Okay. Jessica, are you in a position to maybe give us an update in regards to the timeline and how things are progressing with the 2023 audit? Eastline did provide a schedule in regards to the completion, and it indicated that they were in a position or would be sending you the requested information by the middle of November. Just curious to see how things are progressing and if they've provided the information you've requested at this time.
Sure. They were, so yeah, the timeline was for them to request, for them to give us the requests for the 23 audit by 11/15. And then we would start audit field work, if you will, around mid-December, ultimately with an issuance of about February 15th. We checked last week, which was the 15th on Friday. We had not received anything from them in our portal. So I believe they're out of one is out of the country and one is on surgery right now. So I haven't touched base with them, but as of Friday, we hadn't received anything. We still have some time before we were going to start final field work in the middle of December. So I don't want to write that off yet. And I think we need to follow up with them, but that was the timeline. And as of now, we don't have anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Kim, Bill, would we be able to do a direct reach out next week?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a correction, just so you're aware, Chair. On page 7, the date for the FY24 says 2024. It really was meant to be 2025.
Where is that again, Kim?
Page 7 of the FY24 timeline.
Yep.
Is set for, it's just a typographical error saying 24, but it really should have been 25. I will say that I have a concern about the FY24 audit compared to the FY23, in that it would show that they would be turning over in full completion of their audit for 24 within a 3-month time period. So I think that we should follow up and also with CLA to make sure that that is a realistic timeline.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Right. Next up is the town of Marlborough. Do we have town manager David Porter and interim finance director Linda Savitsky on the call?
You do. We are here.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. As you are aware from our previous interactions, during FY23, we did not have a finance director for most of the year, save a few short weeks, basically. We also are operating with very limited institutional memory. I was not yet hired at that point. Linda Savitsky had not yet joined us, and the business manager at the Board of Education, who was the last remaining supervisory team member employed during fiscal 23, left Marlborough effective June 30th. So as we have been compiling records for our auditors and trying to close out the year, we have discovered a series of journal entries that normally would have been completed, but absent a finance director, were not. We have been working diligently to identify those transfers, reconcile accounts, and enter those journal entries to create an accurate record for our auditors to review. Key to that effort has been reconciling the Board of Education and town transfers and updating our fixed assets. We are working diligently and making terrific progress, and we have our next check-in with our external team at CLA in mid-December. And even though we do not yet have a firm projected completion date, I remain optimistic that it will be, in the early part of the new year.
Can I just add one thing?
Of course.
I just want to add something that's really kind of bubbled. It's been bubbling along, but now it really seems to be. We had a 40-year tax collector who chose not to run in November, and it appears that the same problem that we've run into on the finance department side and the Board of Ed side, we're running into in the tax office for 23 as well. We don't have any institutional knowledge, and we are having issues just doing something that we started out and things appeared to be in balance. And then when we got into the detail, we discovered that there were all kinds of errors in records. So our single biggest challenge is the fact that, as David said, we just don't have any institutional knowledge of what occurred during 23. And we are in it's a challenge to sort of, you almost have to go back and reconstruct the whole year. So I still am optimistic that we're going to be able to have our call, that we will have our call with CLA in December, but the tax office is now starting to bog things down. And the tax office, by the way, is only staffed with an elected tax collector and a part-time clerk, neither of whom were here during 23.
So there's a new elected tax collector from this past November?
Yeah, the good news is that this individual actually was a tax collector a long time ago. And so, and did additional work in other positions in government, local government. So to this individual's credit, she is just digging in and trying to make sure that what we discover missing in 23 is clean for 24. We're trying to do almost the 2 years simultaneously so that what we see happen in 23 won't happen in 24.
To the extent that there is a silver lining in our situation, it is that 23 has been even more challenging than we anticipated, but we also expect 24 to go much more smoothly and much more quickly. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we are looking forward to finishing 23, then rolling right into 24, completing that much more quickly, and getting back on track and submitting timely for 2025.
Okay. How are things going with filling the finance director position permanently?
We're not, because we've made a decision, and I think I had indicated that in the spreadsheet. I'm not here full time, and we had no luck attracting any candidates that have municipal experience. And David made the recommendation that my time would be better served getting the audit done rather than starting to train somebody who might have an accounting background but might not know anything about municipal. So we've put that whole process on hold until we at least get the 23 audit finished.
Okay. But being part-time, are you looking to bring in any support?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Well, yes, we are. And the likelihood is that we're probably going to look to bring the support in, if we can do it over the next 30 days, who will then take the role that we've heard Danbury and East Lyme used, sort of plotting out what we have to get done for 24 so we can move it along real quickly, excuse me.
Okay. Commissioners?
Could you just clarify what your timing is on 23, the audit, and also 24, I guess, and how it relates, since you are trying to pick up some efficiencies with 24 while you do 23?
We don't have a deadline yet. We're not going to know until we sort of see where we are with this tax problem and deal with the Board of Ed issue and the fixed assets. Those turned out to be the 3 open items. We'll be talking to the auditors mid-December, and at that point, we'll sort of be able to map out where we think we can go from here. So we don't have a timeline.
So we don't have a projected date on 23 yet as of today.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Kim, do you have any follow-up on this one?
I would say the only follow-up is the same request that Commissioner Sullivan already asked, is at least have a goal of a timeline if you could. And because you mentioned that you were going to get back on track again, and I just think it would be helpful for us to have target dates, even if the target date, to the best realistic that you can make it. And maybe that happens and you can provide it after you have your meeting with CLA in December.
Well, I think that's the hope, but from my own several years of experience, I'm not going to put a date out there that we can't make. So I prefer to be realistic about, what the date is. And a lot of that CLA is going to play a part in that because we have to fit into their schedule as well.
Understand.
Vanessa, are you on the call?
I'm here, yes.
Anticipating, maybe they're in a position come January with providing the information. How does that work into your schedule?
Yeah, obviously, the bulk of the season is through December 31st, so we would be ready to jump on whatever they have ready beginning of the new year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, David, Linda, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so after a little bit of a delay, we're now looking forward to hearing from the representatives from the city of Derby.
Good morning. Hello again.
Good morning. Mayor DiMartino and Finance Director Brian Hall. It's good that you're with us this morning. So if you can start off with maybe just giving us an update on how things have progressed since the last time we met.
Sure. So we've, I think the last time we met, we had finished up the 23 audit. We discussed a lot of those findings. So we're well on our way in the 24 audit. If I go through your update list, I think, from a staffing standpoint, we've had some challenges in the tax office with some personal issues and folks taking a lot of time off there. So I've had to, my team has had to help cover a lot of that office. It's pulled away from many of the other things we need to do, but it's obviously very critical that office be staffed. So we're working through those challenges this year. From a finance and accounting system standpoint, we're still really trying to get this new ERP system working properly. It's not being utilized as it should be. There's a lot of manual processes as far as trying to book revenue. One system, our QDS, our tax system, isn't really feeding into it properly. So a lot of the bank recs are still have to be done manually, which again creates a lot of work for the team to have to try to take on. The other item we talked about last time was police outside work. We're still negotiating with the police union. We think that that's getting really close. The last pass did have a significant increase in margin that the city could start to charge. And I do anticipate that if that's passed and approved, that should resolve this particular issue that we've had for the last few years. As far as the 24 audit goes, we're certainly ahead of prior year's schedule. I came on in December of 23. So, many of the things when I first joined was just pulling together audit documents. So we're doing better, but as you know, I think I can mirror a lot of some of the struggles with folks not have, having not be here anymore that were here in 23, 24. A lot of catch up work since we were behind in the 23 audit at that point. So, I unfortunately would not anticipate it getting done by December. But I certainly think it's going to get done before we did prior year, but likely Q1, end of Q1 is a more realistic timeline for the 24 audit as far as Derby's concerned. I'm also going to take time. I'd rather sacrifice a little bit of time there and try to address some of the deficiencies that were identified in the 23 audit. Things that just have never really been put in place as far as some of the reconciliations between the city and the Board of Ed. As an example of things that I would like to get addressed, and it's just going to add a little bit to the timeline, but I'd prefer to do that and try to knock out as many of these deficiencies as possible, even if it does come as far as an extended timeline as getting the audit complete. But as far as the, from a good news standpoint, right, the 23-24 numbers, the full year estimate is very positive. The city and the mayor that took a lot of actions as far as utilization of ARPA funds in order to address a lot of the concerns and budget shortfalls. We've had some good collection efforts with the new tax collector. At least some of these issues came in. So, I think we're looking at 1.2 million favorability, which would get our fund balance back up to around 3.8 million, which is, it's not the 10% target, but it's certainly well on its way, and it will end the streak of multiple years of having a negative fund balance at the end of an audit period. So I think that's some great news. Certainly feel very confident about that. I wouldn't expect any problems with that. And then the current year, as you know, again, the board and the mayor did a great job in getting a tax increase raised. It was the first time in multiple years that Derby had actually had a tax increase. So, while we wouldn't have those ARPA funds obviously available anymore, we'll have a solid tax base to cover all these expenses. I feel very confident going into the next budget year that, we shouldn't have certainly any, I don't think we'll have any increase, but nothing that is going to be like what we had to do our first year here. As far as the ARPA goes, we're going to utilize the standard allowance for revenue loss. There was some projects that were encumbered that I'm not confident are going to be at a place where, again, you have to have the RFP done, you have to be contracted. I don't think that's going to be happening. So in the December board meeting, I'm going to recommend that we utilize the remainder of the ARPA funds for just based on the standard allowance and just clear that out so that the city is not at risk of having to give any of those ARPA funds back. Is there anything else? Any other questions I can help address?
I'm going to start with opening it up to each of the commissioners. So, Tony, do you have anything?
I don't have anything at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Becky?
No, Mike, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Ed?
So just to clarify, it sounds like the 24 audit, with the extensions, you'll be within the time frame of filing.
Yes, I would expect there'll be extensions, but I'm hoping not to extend past Q1, but certainly not past that June deadline.
June 24th deadline. Okay. And then just quickly in the materials you sent in, it looked like your collection rate on property taxes went down, like doubled, the uncollectible rate doubled from what it was prior. And I think you had mentioned you have a new tax collector. Is that something, they'll be working on, going forward and trying to improve that and bring it up to where it was prior.
Yeah, I'm not sure if are you referencing maybe the budget, because there was an issue with the 23-24 budget, and that they.
Yeah. So I think it was at 98.2 versus 96.4, so I think one was projecting 24, and then I think 25 was projected to 96.6 or so.
Yeah, I think that higher 98 number was an unrealistic budget number that was put in place, and again, was one of the reasons why we had to take some actions with the ARPA funds and shortfalls we're anticipating. The 96.4 was slightly better than the previous year, which was around 96. So we are trending up. I think it is absolutely something that we need to continue to improve upon with the new tax collector. And I think there's a lot of things we could do, a lot of best practices we can put in place that just haven't been happening at Derby for the last few years.
Great. Thank you.
Diane?
I do have a couple questions. Can you just go over again the ARPA funds and your timing and your using the standard allowance? I would hate to see Derby lose any funds or have to return any funds. So I just want to understand what you're trying to do with funds that right now are not obligated or you don't have contracts for.
Right. So there's only about a remaining $500,000 or so of funds that years ago they had obligated for a project that has just been delayed, right? So I would say that in December, I shouldn't have any issues with getting the board to approve use of those ARPA funds for revenue loss based on, general government expenses that we have for this year.
Okay, so you'll be able to allocate them this year before December 31st with using revenue loss.
Yes, using revenue loss, correct. Yeah, and we'll plan is to do that in the December board meeting. I was hopeful that they could maybe get this contract done for this one project, but Mayor and I have discussed it, and it's just cutting it too close. So.
And the other question, the 1.7 million that you have in your ARPA revenues for 24, those funds have all been expended and obligated in 24. Okay.
Yeah, those were done for the 23-24. The board approved them. We allocate them for specific expenses. So yeah, just like I said, the remaining 500 or so we'll get done in December.
Okay, that's all I have, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, Glenn.
Mike, I have to identify for the record that Derby is a client, and at this time I have no questions.
Okay. Thank you. Marcia, I don't know if you had a chance to review the materials, but any follow-up questions?
Okay. I did, and I've gone back through several videos of different meetings just to try and get myself up to speed here. And I understand that you increased the taxes in 2025. I see in 2024 that you overexpended your budget by about 6%. What controls do you have in place in 2025 to make sure that you don't overexpend each line item?
So many of the line items that were overexpended related to benefits and things that really let's call it the finance office was responsible for budgeting for, and that I'm confident having played a large part in the 24-25 budget, that will not be an issue again. Having looked at what we previously expended, I mean, benefits, Derby is self-insured, so there is going to be a certain amount of variability with those, but I feel much more confident that we've got realistic budget assumptions in there for 24-25 that have never been put into place previously.
Do you have controls like purchase orders where they can't overexpend their budget, and you can see when it's coming close or things like that?
Yeah, we do. We absolutely have to approve all the purchase orders for the department heads. In general, I feel like the department heads at Derby are pretty responsible, and we haven't really had an issue there. I think where Derby's had an issue is where there aren't those purchase order controls per se, with things like benefits. You know, as the expenses come in, you know, we have to pay them or benefits will get shut off. And so really that boils down to if you don't budget it appropriately, you're just going to be stuck with the variances.
Right. Do you do transfers on an interim basis or during the year to try and transfer money from one budget line to another?
We will. If a certain director needed to transfer money within their budget, they absolutely, we go to our Board of Taxation multiple times last year. We ended up doing that for certain items. However, the big items, like I said, where we're talking about the benefits, we did have to go to the Board of Alders and, you know, explain the variance, and that's where they approved the use of the ARPA funds to cover those expenses. So like I said, there are those practices in place. You know, we have a little bit of a cushion and a working balance to cover unexpected expenditures, but we had nowhere near enough for 23, 24. But there is still something in there for 24, 25. And I think the couple of expenses that may come up, we can hopefully cover with those.
Right.
But yeah, the transfer would have to get approved by the Board of Taxation.
Okay. And then my only other question was that in watching the old meetings, there were several instances about the special ed grants being in the general fund and the police outside services being in the general fund. And you had said that that's the way the auditor wants it. And I would just remind you that they're your financial statements and that as long as it's according to GAAP, that you could do it the way you think is appropriate.
Yeah, and I apologize for any kind of misleading understanding of kind of how that is played out. You know, I did speak with our auditor, and I think that there are some reasons why that was the case, specifically in the deficiencies with the commingling of funds and reasons why he recommended that have to be the case. But I think as we've started to address some of those, we can start to do it more appropriately.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Diane, did you have a follow-up question?
I do actually, and I'm sorry if I keep raising my hand there. I do have a question, just getting back to the controls, because Marcia brought up a very good point. And looking at your 24, your Board of Ed looks like they overspent their budget. What controls do you have in place for that? And is that something that would be funded at what point if they're overspending throughout the year?
So the Board of Ed is an area where there probably is not enough controls. I have been working closely with them to try to help them with their reporting and to be able to anticipate when or if they're going to be over budget. I think last year they were surprised a little bit by some reporting problems on their end. So they thought they were in better shape than they actually were. Once I identified those problems, you know, I discussed it with the Board of Ed, and I also then had to talk to the Board of Alders, where they had to approve the additional funds that were needed to close those budget gaps, which again, we ended up using ARPA funds to do that. So yeah, I am trying to stay in closer touch with the Board of Ed, reviewing their reporting to make sure that we do that. And again, reconciling between the Board of Ed and the city is a high priority deficiency that I'm looking to address that I'm sure will also help this problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Kim?
Yes, one item. I just wanted to make sure that your eye hasn't come off the ball yet on the audit findings and that you're making some progress in that area as well.
Yes, for sure. We've definitely addressed a few of the audit items. I expect them to come off. I think some of the other ones like I've discussed as far as the reconciliation between the Board of Ed is still in flight, but you know, we have a plan to address those. just a lot of it is still catch up right now. Again, we really had to focus on the 23 audit when I started that and getting the budget fixed and closing a lot of those holes. So now we're working on 24, but you've got almost a full year of things you've got to really try to go back and address and fix. So it's going to take a little time, but we're absolutely aware of these problems and I expect that we will address them.
Thank you.
I just had two items. Regarding the Board of Education, do they have a business manager over there?
They do, yes. He may even be on the call right now. Sure.
Yes, I'm Robbie Trainer. I'm the business manager for Derby.
Good morning, Robbie. Would you mind providing the commission with some updates on what's happening over at the Board of Education to the commission?
Yeah, like Brian said, we are working very closely, specifically on the bank reconciliations. Keeping a really close eye on our special ed costs, the out-of-district placements. We're in a very transient district, so on any given day, we could find out people are moving in, moving out. So it's very fluid, but I'm working very closely with Brian to make sure that we're all on the same page.
How do you feel that the 24-25 budget is holding up?
So far, so good. With the information that we have as of today, we are on pace. But like I said, special ed is a huge concern. So we're keeping a very close eye on it.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I will say is there are some legacy budgeting issues between the Board of Ed and the city where the way we're going to address it in 25-6 budget, but we knew it was a problem 22-23 when we found it out, where certain items are the expense hits the Board of Ed side, but the expectation was that the city would budget for them, and that communication has been lacking in the previous years, and so unfortunately that's an item that just keeps rearing its ugly head year after year. It's going to happen again in 24-25 because again it was kind of found right after the budget was struck. So I think while Robbie is saying he's on track for the budget items that he's aware of and expectation, that's correct. There is probably about $200,000 of expense that has historically been a problem because of budgeting issues where the expense is on the Board of Ed side and it's supposed to be budgeted on the city side. So I think going forward, we've agreed that to alleviate this problem for us and then for any future people, the easiest thing to do is if the expense is on the Board of Ed side, you budget for it. The expense is on the city side, the city will budget for it. That should take care of any issues as far as making sure that one side's communicating with the other and making sure we've got all those items covered.
Okay, Marcia.
Just with regard to the current year, how are you handling the electricity? I know here that our electric costs with this surcharge are going up $250,000. I would assume yours are about the same. Is that a Board of Ed issue as well as a town issue? And how are you handling it?
I know I was aware of at least a 13% increase at the time we did the budget. So we did budget a pretty large increase for electricity. That coupled with the fact that looked at some vendors we were using, there was some legacy contracts with our natural gas supplier that really were outdated and not not where they needed to be. So basically came up with a new vendor for those that brought some costs down to offset some of the increases in other places. So I think we're budgeted appropriately, but yeah, it's certainly a challenge with these continuing increased costs.
Well, because the surcharge, I know on our side that it's went up the delivery 50 to 57% just until April 30th. So I would take a look at that and just make sure that you're aware of it and you've got money in the budget for it.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. And the last question I had was on the revaluation. When was the last revaluation?
You want to take that one?
Well, we're scheduled to have a reevaluation next year, but we pushed it back a year, so we'll be the 2026 will be the next one. Last time we did one, I believe, was 2020.
Okay. Okay. So October 1, 2026?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor and Dan and Robbie, thank you. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Hamden. Do we have Mayor Garrett on the call?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I just want to start off with our finance staffing. The town's previous finance director, Curtis Eatman, he has some big life changes going on. He's getting married and he moved out of state. And so we are otherwise fully staffed. And I'm here today with our deputy finance director, Rick Galarza. But we are in the process of hiring a new finance director. We're recruiting. We've held some interviews, and so we're trying to get a new finance director, but we're in very good hands until that happens. We've recently hired a full-time risk manager who is doing a fantastic job and really getting a hold of our workers' comp claims. She's a lot more proactive, so I appreciate that. We are also trying to settle some claims. We have also hired a new economic development director, Ayana Wayner, who comes to us from New York City. And I think that she is going to be very good for us in getting more economic development going through and wrapping up some of the projects that we have lingering. I'll move on to our audit. We're expecting a very favorable audit, and we're running just a bit behind. We have a new auditing firm that we're working with, which is just slightly different for us. We are going to know where we stand once the auditors have gone through the batch of documents that we've already submitted, but we do expect an extension. Our current, well, I'll stick with our previous budget for fiscal year 24. Like I said, we expect that to be pretty favorable. We collected 99.8% of our taxes. And we are expecting some positive variances in revenue and less expenditures than was budgeted. What else? We utilized some fund balance. Some of that went to an agreed MOA with the Board of Education, and some went to capital. And this was all through the sale of a town asset, Wintergreen School. And so there was an expectation when we sold the school that we would split the revenue with the Board of Education. And so some went to their operating budget, and most of it went to capital non-recurring account that had been set up for the Board of Education. Our ARPA spending our ARPA budget is doing really well. We're on track to be fully obligated. So I sent an update for all of our ARPA budget and funds. And most of what is included in here that was still unobligated has been obligated as of Monday night's council meeting. There are two that are still unobligated. One is our sewer study for 200,000, and that contract will be going to the Legislative Council on December 2nd to get obligated. The other is for after-school programming. We have a contract. I have signed it, and we're just waiting for the vendor to sign it. Otherwise, everything has been fully obligated. The current fiscal year budget is on track. Nothing really of note there. And I think that's about it.
Okay. In regards to the audit extension, and I know you have the vacant finance director position, but are you thinking January, February timeframe?
Yeah, I think that's about right. The rest of our staff really does handle the audit. The reconciliations, the uploading of all the documents, everything's really done by our accountant and our deputy finance director. So I don't think that the vacancy in the finance director is really going to be impactful for the audit. It's more so that we have a new auditing firm, and so we have to send a lot more information because our previous auditor already had a lot of information.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the commissioners. We'll start with Glenn.
My only question was kind of looking forward. I know you said with the change of the finance director that's anticipated to be filled in, a lot of that function is being handled by the staff. I guess I was looking forward to what was happening, I guess primarily your pensions and OPEB. I know you've got 5 years under your belt, I think it is now, of making the 100% contribution. I guess my question would be, is there any thoughts of accelerating that because of the funding level being where it's at? Is there anything in addition to that you would take?
Well, we hired a pension accountant. She's been with us for about a year now, and she's gathering all the required information to do an experience study, which we're undergoing. We are wrapping up our OPEB audit and pension audit, and I think that we are accelerating our pension contributions. What's in our actuarially determined contributions, our projections are that we're increasing that by about $1 million every year. So we're at $24 to $25 million right now, and that's going to continue to go up. Our OPEB, we're also negotiating 7 of our 8 contracts, and so we're really trying to bend the curve on OPEB through our contract negotiations by asking our unions to pay a little more towards their healthcare and moving towards HSAs.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane.
I'm all set. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Marcia.
What was the $3 million additional appropriation in this fiscal year for?
Capital.
It was 2.9 something.
2.9. Yeah, that went to capital.
For the Board of Education.
All right, from the sale of that property?
Yeah, for capital, that was a council ordinance that was passed So what we did was we created a transfer out of the general fund, and it was earmarked to be utilized from fund balance to the Board of Ed. So we created a payment to the board. So you'll see it in Finance Department as revised budget of 2.96. And at the end of the year, once we close out, that'll offset from our fund balance. Unless we're more favorable in the current fiscal year. So we'll have funds in the general fund to help offset that 2.9. So it's not necessarily at this point in time earmarked out of the fund balance, but that's just the way council approved it as a safety net.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Becky?
Yeah, I just want to go back to something you said a moment ago about someone on staff collecting information to do an experience study for the pension plan.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify that is someone is collecting data so that the actuary can do an experience study, or is it you're planning to do it on your own and I have to bring you up on charges of practicing actuarial science without a license? Okay.
Sure. No. We work with Siegel, and Siegel will do the experience study, but they are asking for data from the town for that information.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. Ed?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Tony?
Yes, thanks, Mike. I have actually a follow-up on Marcia's question. I was trying to track I see the $3 million appropriation, as you mentioned. I guess my first question is, with all this activity with the fund balance, do you have a projected sort of percentage of fund balance to revenue or expenditures for the end of the year once all this is sort of goes, flows through the books? I thought maybe I'd see one here because of all the activity, but if you could, do you have something you can tell us, or what you project?
Yeah, so sure, we expect to stay well above 7%, and the close of this last fiscal year, our unaudited closeout, it looks very favorable and will keep us well above 7% for our fund balance.
Okay. And my second question is on department revenue. It says, I was trying to track this through the statements. I thought maybe you can give us a better idea. It says that you have a 99% remaining. I know part of that's the fund balance issue, but can you just sort of give us an idea of why the actuals are just 350,000 and yet your projected is 30 million? Just, it's on the summary page. The last category says department revenue. Because I did see some department revenue in the detail, so I was just trying to track that, and so I thought maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, some of that, because since we've been focusing on the audit for 22-23, we shifted over all of our actual 23-24. We shifted over some of our postings, so that's a timing issue. At the balance of the halfway through this fiscal year, for the end of our second quarter, that'll be more of a realistic actual. But right now, we just shifted off from our manual postings to just moving them to a quarterly posting. So this report was sent in November, so you didn't really catch the full second quarter. So that will be more in line by the end of December 31st.
So the report, it doesn't have all of the revenues booked. You're going to book them.
Yeah, there may be a little bit of a timing lag there in some of the categories.
So you don't see a problem collecting. It looks like you actually the full 26 million. Of the.
No, we don't have the only thing that it's working. The only thing that we may be an issue is in our building department or traffic building is the cameras that may be a little bit of a delay installing those cameras, but and I think that was a $5 million line revenue projected line. But what we're planning on doing is any surplus from the prior fiscal year as we close out will help offset anything in fiscal year 24-25. So until the audit's done, and like the mayor said, we're projecting to have a favorable year end. So any surplus, once it drops down to the fund balance, we can use it to offset any projected losses in the revenue for the current fiscal year. And we're still projecting to stay, because we have a fund balance policy. So we're still projected to stay above the 7% that's required with our fund balance policy.
Okay, so I'm just curious, the cameras, is that going to be like violation revenue or something?
Yes, so we expect that for this second half of the fiscal year. So we're in vendor selection right now, and we'll be under contract very soon. But yes.
Interesting. Okay, and I'm sorry, I just have one last question. The part of the transfer to the Board of Education for operating, was that for operating costs?
Capital.
Oh, okay, because it would just
so we transferred it out of the so you'll see the revenue going up for 2.9 in finance, and you'll see the transfer out on the expense side that offsets that transaction. Once the board receives it on their side, it will be placed into the capital fund for non-reoccurring on the board side, which is from the general fund to the capital fund. That's how it'll be booked on their side.
Right.
In the town side. So it's cut out of the general fund, offset by preliminarily the fund balance received on the capital fund, which is Fund 003, and placed in the capital non-recurring account for the Board of Ed to spend for capital purposes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Kim?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, all right. Mayor and Rick, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next up is the town of Plymouth. Do we have Mayor Kilduff and anyone else on the call this morning?
Good morning. I believe our interim finance director, Seth Bernstein, is also on the call. Seth, you there?
He's on mute.
Okay. It's possible he may have had to get off. He's part-time and works for another town, so he may not. He may be doing something else at the moment. So unfortunately, since our last meeting, we did have an issue in our finance department.
Figure out how to unmute myself.
Oh, there you go, Seth. We did have an incident in our finance department. We had a social engineering scam that we did fall victim to. The town originally was out $208,300. Since that time, we have recovered a little bit more than half of that. One of the payments was returned in full, and then we did get another partial repayment. So we're on the hook now about $84,000. There is an insurance claim. The FBI has been notified. There's an investigation into it. There's no suspicion of any employee involvement other than obviously falling victim to the scam. But due to this incident, I met with our former finance director, and we agreed it was in the best interest of both parties that she tender her resignation, and she did. Unfortunately, there's no good time for that to happen, but this is especially a bad time because we were hopefully about to file an on-time audit for the first time. And obviously that is now, unfortunately, not going to happen. When this first came to my attention that we did send 2 payments, I immediately had a review of the situation. It turns out what happened is one of our vendors was hacked without their knowledge for about a month. And during that time, we started to receive what appeared to be legitimate invoices with incorrect payment information. And unfortunately, that got through our controls here, and that's how we fell victim to that. I don't know, any questions on that so far? I want to give you an opportunity if.
I guess I would just.
Go ahead.
I just ask if you've made changes in your controls or your processes to mitigate that issue coming up again in the future.
So this really, this really unfortunately did boil down to human error. At the time, we were currently going through a fraud risk assessment. We've had trainings that all employees have to take on this very incident. It was actually this administration that brought in the Know Before training module. We constantly send out, mock phishing emails and things of that this should have been caught. And unfortunately it wasn't. But yes, any change of payment information, which is what happened here, they asked for a different payment method. That's an immediate red flag. And we're, with Seth's help, we're, trying to provide more training for our finance department. But again, unfortunately, what happened, it was just human error. So, like I said, never a good time for that. But we are certainly looking to improve where we can. The fraud risk assessment was recently issued, and we're going to be looking at that as well to implement as many of those recommendations as we can. Certainly, once we have a new full-time finance director, that position was posted. I brought on Seth part-time to help us through in the interim. He is a CFO for another municipality as well. So he does have a little bit of experience, which is helpful. But we do need somebody full-time, so he is here in the interim to help us through. I would expect, and hopefully I'm able to have some sort of some overlap time with the person that I hire and Seth, so we don't start from scratch completely again. Our finance team is continuing to reconcile our accounts, so to put us in the best possible position for the new person when that person is hired. We have held a couple of interviews, and I have 2 candidates that are going to move on to the next step, and hopefully, we're able to make a hire relatively soon on that. So we are moving ahead. We weren't behind on any of our bank reconciliations when this happened. We're going to maintain that, and again, hopefully that puts us in the best possible position. I think it's obvious we're not going to make the December 31st deadline for our fiscal 24 audit, but we don't want to go past the extension deadline at the end of June, and then hopefully have an on-time audit next year.
Okay. Working through the other commissioners, Tony, anything?
No, I'm all set, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Becky?
No questions, just note for the record that Plymouth is a client.
Okay. All right. Diane?
Just one follow-up question, and you might have mentioned this.
Sure.
I know fraud and risk is, high on everybody's alert right now. You said that you were using Know Before for training for the staff. Is that organization-wide?
Yes,
it is organized.
yes,
Okay.
through the town of Plymouth. I'm not sure if the Board of Ed uses it, but on the town side, we do use that, and that's been we implemented that pretty early on in my administration, so 2.5 years or so, and it's just training on exactly what happened. And so sometimes you can put all that training and things can unfortunately still happen. But I just wanted to make it very clear that we do take that seriously. This was an unfortunate incident, but we had taken steps to try to prevent it, and unfortunately it still happened.
Right. You might want to maybe push that out to the Board of Ed as well down the road, but I think
I will. That is a good point. I will certainly ask them what I'm sure they have something just off the top of my head. I'm not sure what it is, but I will certainly get that information.
Great. Thank you. That's all I had,
Thank
Mike.
you. Thank you for the suggestion.
Does the Board of Ed pay their own bills, or is that through the town?
They pay their own, but we reimburse them. So they send it to us. We make a transfer into their account, and then they pay.
Okay.
So they do their own payroll. They do all that, and then they submit a warrant to us, and we transfer the funds into their account.
Okay. Is the Board of Ed been part of the discussion on the incident that's happened in ensuring some controls are put in place if they're not already in place for the Board of Ed?
So when this incident happened, the superintendent was one of my first phone calls. And, you know, he assured me that, that they have proper training and everything in place, but I can certainly get more details on exactly what they have. And I can bring that to our next meeting, or prior to that, if I get a satisfactory answer, I can send you written notice on what exactly they have.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Glenn?
My only question is, you had mentioned that you've got training for the people,
Yes.
you know, employees of the town and such. Is that going to also include an overhaul, some procedural steps in there, you know, matching payments to, you know, invoices to purchase orders and such, as well as confirming changes? I know we've had issues where we're at, and we go through kind of an extra step of, if there's anything different than what we have, you know, we reach out and, you know, talk to the folks there, and then, you know, and there's a procedure for changing what we have on file. So I was curious if you had anything that was going to emphasize procedural changes other than just the computer.
So not that wasn't our practice before. Again, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but you know, none of our current employees really had anything to do with how this happened. They didn't touch this. It was nothing that they did broke any kind of policy or procedure that we have. So certainly we're going to reiterate what the proper procedures are. And when we do make a permanent hire, I expect that new person to review and make any recommendations that they have as well. But certainly in the interim, any changes in payment information are coming directly to me for final approval. That was done before. Unfortunately, like I said, sometimes you can do what you're supposed to do, and it still falls through the cracks. And ultimately, it was my responsibility. But I think moving forward, it was a painful lesson learned.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that really quickly, we talked about, you know, what happened and they were hacked, but the policy and procedure going forwards is to pick up the phone and call the vendor and ask them, because as we noticed, their systems can be compromised, and everything was legitimate down to email address, the chain of email, the invoices were legitimate. They just asked that it be wired instead of sent by our normal check payment route. And so going forwards now, we have decided that we're going to pick up the phone and call and ask, did you mean to do this? Is this legitimate?
Okay.
Yep.
Marcia?
I have no questions on the cyber incident, but later I'll have questions on the finances.
Sure.
Okay. I think we can go there at this point. Mayor or Seth, do you want to provide any update on how the finances are so far this year?
Sure. So actually the meeting this week, our ARPA committee did distribute the remaining funds, or at least recommended the distribution of remaining funds. That'll go to Board of Finance tomorrow, and then ultimately the council in early December. We had approximately $80,000 left to allocate. And so we made those final allocations, you know, before the deadline. So our ARPA dollars should be fully distributed. As far as our tax collections go, we've been quite successful in back tax collections, especially on the motor vehicle. Our tax collector recently changed collection agencies, and she's seen quite a large jump in collections since that switch. So we're very happy about that. And you know, as far as our finance go, I don't think there's anything notable besides the cyber incident. So I would certainly take any questions that you have.
Okay. Marcia?
So you allocated the 72,000, but you still have almost 800,000 that's not encumbered. Are you going to, what is the plan to encumber that before December 31st?
Let me pull that up here.
And try to find the page number here.
Yeah. You're talking about fiscal 24, right?
Um,
The year to date.
the report that you sent, yes, of our packet, it is page 124.
Let me find that.
It was a general ledger with budget adjustments through November 13th, 2024.
So you're talking about this current year then?
Yes, it starts from July 1, 22 to 11/13, and you just want to make sure you get it
You're referring
encumbered.
to ARPA?
ARPA.
Okay.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, ARPA. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the operating budget. I was confused.
Oh.
I apologize.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, ARPA.
Yeah, no, okay. So yes, I'm only you're showing 800,000. Oh, and the balance. Yes. So yeah. So obviously we have to have it allocated by the end of December, but you obviously, as long as you have a purchase order contract in place, you can continue to expend those funds. So we're making sure that any project that may go beyond December, we'll have those in place so those projects can still move forward.
Okay. And the
Yeah.
second question is you have blight fines of a negative 105,000. Why are
Yes.
why is that negative?
So we currently have a building that was condemned, and so there were tenants that had to be moved, and so that's where that's getting paid out of currently.
Okay.
Yeah. So the plan is obviously to lien that property and hopefully recoup that when that happens. But yeah, that's why that went negative pretty drastically recently.
Okay.
So
Thank
16 apartments, it can rack up pretty quickly.
All right. Thank you.
Kim?
The only question that I have right now, Mayor, is are you having Seth participate in your CFO hire?
Yeah, my plan would be to have Seth at least sit down with a potential candidate. We're still preliminary interviews right now with our human resources, but certainly the next step, anyone that clears that, I will ask Seth to sit down and at least have a meeting with the person or persons that I'm considering. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
And like I said, I want to have, hopefully I can find some funds to do it, but I do think some overlap when there is a hire to have Seth on. So again, the new person won't be starting completely from scratch. I intend to do that if I can find the funds for it.
Very good.
Especially if the person may not have
that we want to do.
Yeah. Especially if the person that's hired may not have, municipal experience where Seth does. So that would be helpful to impart that knowledge. Because I think that was a major detractor for our last finance director coming in without any municipal experience. I think that individual struggled, especially early on with that. And I would like to have the new person not have that. Hopefully we can find someone with municipal experience, but as you all know, that can be difficult. So.
Understand. Thank you.
All right, well, Mayor, certainly an unfortunate incident. We wish you well in hopefully landing a finance director with some experience to pick up where you guys were going. You were certainly on a good path.
Yes, and hopefully I'm looking at it as a 2-step forward, 1 step back, and then hopefully we get there. We're trying, and I expect that we are finally able to get there for the next audit. That was our goal this year, and I think we were going to do it, but unfortunately this happened, which hung us up. But I would, certainly our goal would be to make, to not have to file. Well, I guess you can't file extensions past June anymore, but to meet that final deadline, and then roll right into the 25 and get that done on time. That would be the goal right now.
Okay. All right, Mayor and Seth, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that covers the updates from the various municipalities. Next is under other business is an update on the municipal fiscal indicators. And I think that, as was mentioned earlier on the call, the municipality's failure to file their audits on a timely basis is having a significant impact on OPM being able to generate the municipal fiscal indicators report. Obviously, there were many that were significantly late with 2022. We've got 6 municipalities that are delayed for 2023. And unfortunately, in some of those instances with the 6, we're going to roll well into 2025 at this rate before the audit reports are submitted. But that said, the 2018 to 2022 municipal fiscal indicators report was issued in September. Kim or Bill, do you have any thoughts you want to share with us on that?
I do not, Michael. I don't know if Bill does.
Well, we're disappointed in the the issuance date. We do strive for a more timely, but as we try to incorporate all the 169 municipalities and the city of Groton, making it 170, and there's a lot of averages and totals. So we at one point thought of leaving out the towns that were substantially late, but it at this point it didn't seem to it would create problems in terms of averages, totals on a statewide basis. So we're just trying to get the audits in time to produce this in a more timely manner.
And a lot of times when you don't have all of the data included and we would do an interim report, we really don't have the staffing resources to do that, as we then automatically fall into other cycles during that year. So I think our biggest push is to make sure that we follow up with those towns that are late and make them aware of the urgency and the need to address these matters.
Okay. Commissioners, any follow-up questions on this one? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and appreciate the efforts, Kim and Bill, with the production of the report.
You're welcome.
All right. The last item is with regards to the proposed calendar year 2025 meeting dates. We have, in discussions that I had with Kim and Bill, we are proposing 4 meeting dates next year. 3 of those will be telephonic, and I had a desire to try and at least get one on the books where we could meet in person as a commission. So that is lined up for the meeting on May 7th, and the location will be at the Board of Regents in Hartford, Connecticut. I would entertain a motion for approval of the meeting day calendar for 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I actually have a comment. So since I've been on this board, I've never actually met in person with anybody. So I welcome. So I actually welcome the in-person meeting. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. The motion is passed unanimously, and we have a calendar for next year. And before we adjourn, just some open comments. Again, Marcia, welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
And for everyone on the call, certainly wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving that's coming up next week.
Same to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mike.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you, Mike.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.